Uncovering fraud scheme and investigating fraud is very important skill for anyone to gain if you are working in internal control, if you are working in fraud investigation, if you are working in internal audit, in compliance, in issues related to investigating money laundering, if you are working as a manager, or even if you are working on any committees related to risk management, related to audit committee, and if you are working in the legal department. This is why we have decided to create this short course to give you the main ideas and principles that you need to consider when you are conducting any fraud investigation. So I've been working for the last 10 years as the ACFE authorized trainer, teaching the CFE, the Certified Fraud Examiner certificate. And we have already delivered the training more than 100 times over the last 10 years in the Middle East and Asia. And we have more than 3,500 delegates who took our classes and passed the CFE exam with us. So I encourage you after this class, in case you are thinking about gaining the skills in depth to be able to be certified fraud examiner and gain all the knowledge and skills from A to Z to be able to figure out how can you uncover fraud, investigate fraud, deal with the legal elements, and implementing the proper internal controls inside your organization, you can join my classes. We have delivered the classes virtually, and we have classes face-to-face in UAE, in Oman, in Qatar, in Malaysia, in Saudi Arabia. So you can join any of these classes that we deliver. You can check it all in our website. So now let's get started. The first thing, what is the definition of fraud examination? Based on the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, the definition of fraud examination is uncovering fraud from the inception to disposition. So it's all about resolving fraud allegation from inception to disposition. So when we hear about fraud happening inside our organization, what should we do? The first step that we need to take is what we call fraud response. It's not about investigation. Someone called our hotline saying that someone is doing fraud. We are doing inventory count and we discover some items are missing. So the first step we need to do is what we call fraud response. We need to take the proper action for us to stop fraud from happening. Then later we are going to investigate fraud. Then after that, we are going to decide how we are going to assemble the investigation team. Who is going to be part of the investigation team? What is going to be our investigation strategy? What kind of evidence we need to collect? Who are the individuals we need to interview? And at the same time, what kind of information we currently have and what information we are trying to obtain. So there are so many aspects related to fraud examination that you need to consider when you are starting any fraud investigation. So let's go step by step by understanding what we need to do. They say the first thing in any fraud investigation is, number one, defining the objective of the investigation. So what can be the objective of your investigation? Is it related to uncovering the assets? Some individuals, they say, we don't care about the guy already left our organization. We care about how can we recover the assets? How can we find the proper way to collect the evidence, find the proper legal way to be able to recover the assets? Maybe this is your idea. Maybe this is what you are trying to do. Or maybe your objective is trying to figure out how can we go and figure out the schemes that he used to investigate fraud. Because when someone is doing fraud, definitely they are following certain schemes. They are finding certain gaps. So we need to uncover the scheme they followed. We need to figure out the weaknesses inside our organization to ensure the fraud will not happen in the future. So maybe that's the objective. Or maybe the objective is to figure out how can we go and document the incident in the proper way so we can submit the information to the insurance company, because we already have an insurance against this teller in our bank who stole $2,000. And this teller, after that, we are not going to take action against him. Maybe we are just going to only fire him, and we are going to submit the information to the insurance company, and the insurance company is going to give us the money based on the incident that happened. So this is why it's very important for you as a professional working in any domain. When you uncover any kind of fraud, the first step is you need to speak with the individuals who are in charge of deciding the investigation objective. So here is the question that so many professionals, they ask me. They say, Iyad, when we are deciding the objective of the investigation, who should decide it? Is it the investigation team? Is it the fraud department? Is it the legal department? Well, the answer, it depends on your policy. Inside your organization, you need to have something we call it investigation policy related to fraud. investigation policy related to harassment, investigation policy related to unethical behavior, related to compliance issue. So see, for every kind of issue, we need to have different investigation policy. In your investigation policy related to fraud, you need to outline who is going to be responsible for deciding the objective of the investigation. So some organizations, they say, well, the audit committee will decide the objective. Some will say, no, the fraud department, the head of the fraud department will decide the objective. Or it can be the legal department. It can be, a committee. We call it a fraud committee inside the organization. So you need to go and speak with the person or the committee in charge of deciding the objective of your investigation. And after that, go and, based on their objective, conduct the investigation. Don't go say, oh, do you know what I think? I think we need to conduct the investigation to catch the guy. And then you go and you catch the guy, and after that, what you benefit? After you catch the guy, the organization will tell you, we are not interested in catching the guy. We are interested in going and recovering the assets. You catch the guy, but the guy was able to hide all the assets. Now, we didn't benefit. So this is why always the objective defined by the organization based on the policy that listed related to fraud investigation. So this is number one. Number one is understanding the objective of the investigation. Now, number two, you need to ask yourself, what kind of information we currently have? What kind of evidence we currently have for us to decide, can we launch an investigation or not? Not all the time when we uncover fraud, we are going to launch an investigation. Why? Because maybe we don't have enough evidence to say this is fraud or not. The first question you need to ask in any investigation, question number one, is this fraud or not? So, for example, you do inventory count and you see some items missing from the inventory. You can say, oh, there are some items missing from inventory, we are going to launch an investigation. First, you need to ask questions. Where are these items? You need to ask the person responsible for the warehouse, can you explain to us why the items are missing? You need to go look at the report and see, maybe there is an error. Maybe a person did a mistake. Maybe there was an accident. Maybe the person was not doing his job properly. So, or maybe someone not following the proper policy and the procedure. For example, he moved the item from this warehouse to another warehouse without documenting the issue in the inventory log. So in that way, he violated the company compliance policy. So we can't always, when we discover any kind of fraud, we are going to say, we are going to launch an investigation. We can't launch an investigation until we know for sure that this is actually fraud case, is not error or non-compliance. So someone will say, so how can we collect evidence? I say, no, you can't collect evidence. You can't even call them evidence. They say the first step is we need to collect information. First, you collect information about the issue to understand what are the aspects related to this issue. So this is why the second step we do after defining our investigation objective is to review all the information that we have related to the case to ensure nothing is overlooked. We need to be able to look at all the information we have in our case and say, do we have enough predication? What's the meaning of predication? Enough evidence to launch an investigation, or we still need to collect more information? So in case you have some red flags related to fraud, what you need to do, you need to go and conduct an audit, collect more information. And based on that, you see, do we have evidence? Once you have evidence, you can launch an investigation. But before you have evidence, if someone called the hotline saying we have an employee inside the organization and he is receiving a bribe from the vendor, that's not enough evidence. We don't have enough predication to launch an investigation. What we have, we only have information. We need to go and verify this information before we take the proper action. Like what happened in one organization. What happened in this organization? Someone called the hotline saying 3 of your executives are leaking information to the competition. And he provided them with the personal bank statement for these staff. And then the compliance team met with the investigation team, met with the legal team, and they say, well, we have all the information and evidence. We have someone saying that these 3 employees are leaking the information. We have the personal bank statement that we obtained from this guy who called our hotline and reported. And in that way, we are going to take the proper action and we are going to fire them because they are involved in corruption. They are receiving bribe. Then after they fired the 3 employees, without conducting investigation, what happened? The 3 employees, they came back next day with their lawyers and they said, listen, these are our actual bank statement. We are not doing anything wrong. And the bank statement that you have, the financial bank statement that you have, actually they are not original. They are fake. They are made on Photoshop. But because the organization didn't go and verify the information, didn't go and verify the evidence, they didn't launch the investigation in the proper way, they decided to investigate without having proper evidence. Now they are facing legal issue from these three individuals, that they were fired without a reason. And the CEO of the organization had to go on public TV and say, I'm so sorry that we had to fire these three employees without justification. And this is what can happen to any organization. So this is why we are not allowed to start any investigation without having the proper evidence. If you don't have the proper evidence, you can go and do a discrete inquiry onto the work of the person. You can go and examine exactly what he is working on. You can go and check the processes that he is running. You need to look at his financial report. You need to maybe check his lifestyle to see if there are any indication of something not right. But you are not allowed to say in writing or to communicate in any meeting, we are investigating the person, we are launching an investigation, or we are collecting evidence. In that case, from legal standpoint, it looks like you are targeting him. You are not actually launching an investigation based on the proper evidence. So this is very important. First, you decide your objective. What is the objective of this investigation? Then you need to ask yourself, is this fraud? That's the question you need to ask. Do we have enough evidence to say this is a fraud? If you don't have enough evidence, you try to collect more information. If you have evidence to show this is a fraud, meaning someone done it with intention, it's not a mistake. Someone did it with intention, it's not violation of our compliance rule. In that way, you can start launching the investigation. Now, when you are going to launch the investigation, you need to decide exactly who is going to be part of your investigation team. In the beginning of the investigation, not all the time we are going to start and we are going to say, okay, let's go and let's inform HR, let's inform legal department, let's inform compliance. No, first we need, because we are at the early stages, we are not sure who's involved in this fraud, who can communicate to the fraudsters, who is connected with who. First, we need to decide who is going to be the investigation team. So someone will ask me, yeah, so we are deciding an investigation team related to a case. So who should be part of it? Is it HR? Is it accounting? I say, wait, you go back, you look at your fraud investigation policy. In your fraud investigation policy, they can define exactly who is going to be part of our investigation team. It can be, they say, for example, someone from HR and someone from accounting, someone from finance, someone from legal, and someone from investigation, and someone from internal audit. It can be saying, no, the investigation team should be made only from individuals who are working in the investigation department with the help of one person from legal, one person from compliance. So you need to go back to your investigation policy and based on your policy decide what they said we need to do in case we are creating an investigation team for this investigation. Or sometimes they say, no, there is no investigation team. Any investigation will be handled by the investigation team inside the investigation department. So we don't need to create a team. Investigation team is already created. We have investigation department. The investigation department are going to handle the issue. So in deciding who's going to be part of the investigation team is very important. Now the question that someone will ask, should we include the supervisor of the person who is doing the fraud in the investigation team? Because he can give us information about this person, he can give us record, he can help us in uncovering the fraud that this employee is doing. The answer is maybe, but not at the beginning of the investigation. In the beginning of the investigation, we are not sure if this person, which is the supervisor, is involved in the fraud. Also, we are not sure if this person got a relationship, personal relationship with the suspect. Maybe he will warn him. He will tell him, listen, be careful, someone is investigating you. Or he will informally speak with him to understand what went wrong. So we don't want at the beginning of the investigation to involve him. We say maybe well in the investigation, maybe in the middle or the end, we can involve him in cases related to the investigation to help us in collecting the information, but not at the beginning. Someone will say, should we involve the legal department in the issue? The answer is, in most of the cases, yes. We need to notify the legal department. Not necessarily they are going to be part of our investigation team, but in case we are launching an investigation, it's very important to notify the legal department that we have uncovered issues related to fraud. We are not sure exactly what all the aspects and information, but we answered a very simple question. Yes, it's a fraud, so we are deciding to launch the investigation. So in that case, the legal team is aware about the issue, and we can take advice from the legal team about what information legally we are allowed to obtain, what information we need to obtain, maybe a court order, what information we need to obtain with the consent of someone inside the organization or third party. So they will help us in figuring out all the legal issue. So we are not violating the right of the suspect that we are investigating. We are not violating his privacy, and we are obtaining the information and the evidence in a proper legal way that we can use later in court. So this is very important aspect we need to address. Someone will say, should we notify HR about it? Well, again, it depends on the policy inside the organization. Did they say in the policy, in the investigation policy, in case of fraud happen against an employee, HR need to be notified? If this is the case, you need to notify HR. But definitely it's very important, in case you are launching an investigation, you need to notify senior management or board of director or audit committee based on your investigation policy. Because they need to be aware that we are dealing with a fraud case and an investigation is about to start. But be careful, don't alert the suspect that we are investigating him. Don't come to the office and say we are the investigation team and take the conference room, and in that way everyone knows that you are launching an investigation. Be careful when you are starting an investigation not to send a message inside the organization that we are looking at fraud and we are going to try to find the evidence. We are going after the fraudsters. Because number one, fraudsters, they are going to hear that and they are going to start deleting and destroying evidence. And at the same time, fraudsters, they may run out of the country. They may resign from the organization and leave the country. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want to lose the individuals who are doing the fraud before we speak with them, and we don't want all the information and evidence to also be destroyed. So you need to be discreet at the beginning. The meaning, if you are coming to the organization to collect the information, try to come after everyone left and speak with the finance, obtain the record from them. If you are trying to obtain from IT a copy of the hard drive of the suspect, when everyone left or before anyone started in the morning, come early and collect the information. Don't come to the organization wearing the badge saying, I'm certified fraud examiner, I'm from the fraud department, and we are launching an investigation. Because even if no one is doing fraud, and even if this case at the end is not fraud, now you send a very negative signal inside that department that, okay, there's a fraud happening, investigation team is here, so everyone is scared, they don't know what's going on. We don't want to send that negative message. First, we need to obtain the information and the evidence in the proper way to analyze them, to later decide who is involved in the fraud, how the fraud is done, and how we are gonna launch our investigation strategy. So be careful not to create any kind of panic inside the department or organization that there is a fraud going on and we need to figure out who did it. Now, when you are gonna start deciding your investigation strategy, the best investigation strategy in most of the cases is not the direct approach. What's the meaning direct approach? If someone is doing fraud, let's say if Mike is doing fraud, you don't go and say, Mike, come to my office. I would like to know what is the fraud you are doing. You never start by speaking with the suspect. The suspect is the last person you should speak with. Why? Because this person, he got all the information that you need, but at the same time, he's gonna deny all the information if you don't know them. If you don't know how he did the fraud, if you don't have evidence against him, if you don't have witnesses, when you are gonna immediately go speak with him in the beginning of the investigation, of course he's gonna deny. He's gonna say, no, I didn't do any of that. I have nothing to say. And then you have no evidence, you have no information, no witnesses to know if what he's saying is true or not. So this is why the last person we should speak with is the suspect. Not the beginning. So many organizations, especially legal department, when they discover someone is doing fraud, they bring him to the legal department, they bring him to the head office, and they want to interview him. They want to investigate him. No, this is not the right approach. The right approach, that the first stage in any investigation, we call information gathering stage. This is the stage where we collect the information. So we are collecting the information internally, we are collecting the information externally, we are trying to understand all the aspects related to the issue. Also, we are trying to collect all the evidence related to the case. For us to analyze them, we are getting the financial record and we are analyzing them. We are getting the bank statements, we are analyzing them. We are looking at the social media information. We analyze all the information, and this is the first stage. After we analyze all the information, we need to go and see how the operation is done in that organization. Sometimes we can do observation. We can look at the CCTV camera, see how employees are working, who's working with who, understanding how the department is functioning. After that, we are still in the information gathering stage. The first interview we can conduct with neutral third party, someone not involved in the case, not involved in the fraud. So this is the first person we need to interview. Someone like the security, someone like the accountant, someone in HR, in IT. Why? These individuals, they can help us in collecting information related to the case, related to the suspect, related to the department, but they are not involved in the fraud and they are not involved in the operation of that department. So they are neutral third party, someone out of this department. So in this stage, when we are speaking with them, we should not tell them, oh, we are uncovering fraud and we would like some information from you. No, we need to tell them, we would like to understand exactly how this department is functioning. So please give us information or documents to understand the process. We need to understand how the shipment handled in the warehouse. Give us information. We go to finance, we say we need to understand how invoices are being handled by this department. Give us the invoices and give us the procedures. Just for us to get general information. Still, we are in the first stage, which is information gathering. We are collecting the information. After we collect all the information and evidence that we need, now we go to the next stage. Now the next stage is, we call it what? We call it confirmation seeking stage. Here we need to confirm that the information we have collected, the evidence we obtained, they are correct. So in that way, this is where we speak. The first person or the first individuals we can speak with, they are cooperative witnesses. Witnesses, they are going to help us in obtaining information to confirm what we have, but they are not involved in the fraud case. So it can be a co-worker working in that department with the suspect, but he's not involved in the fraud. It can be the supervisor of the staff, but he's not involved in the fraud. It can be a person working with that department, but is not involved in the fraud. It can be a customer handled by that department. It can be a vendor dealing with that department. So we need to speak with individuals who are cooperative witness, who are involved in the work, but they are not involved in the fraud. For us to confirm that the information we have collected in the first stage, in the information gathering stage, is actually accurate. After that, once we confirm this information, we need to speak with who? With the co-conspirators, the individuals who are involved in the fraud, or maybe supporting fraud, or they are covering fraud, but they are not actually committing the fraud. So maybe someone who is helping him in doing the fraud, or he knows about it, but he is not telling anyone, or he is a friend to the fraudster, or he is facilitating his process, or he is benefiting from it indirectly. So this is where we need to speak with these individuals. But be careful. When we are speaking with them, you should not send them the message, we are from the fraud department, we are certified fraud examiner, we are looking for fraud and corruption issues. No. We are here to understand the process, to figure out how the invoicing process is done, how the cash collection is done, how the hiring process is done. We are speaking in general. So we can collect the information we need to confirm the information we have, but without sending alert that we are conducting an actual investigation. They need to be comfortable that we are just here to obtain information. So this is why sometimes the approach is not the direct approach. The meaning, if everyone knows that you are the certified fraud examiner, you are from the fraud department, maybe you are not the right person to speak with them. Maybe you send someone from audit to speak with them, or someone from finance, or someone from HR. And you can add this individual to our investigation team and make him sign non-disclosure agreement. Or he is already part of the investigation team from the beginning. So many situations, the individuals who can collect the information from the suspect, can collect information from a cooperative witness, from co-conspirator, can be not directly involved in the fraud department, because we don't want to send the signal we are conducting an investigation. It can be sometimes some organizations, they say, okay, we don't have any one of them. We can hire an external consultant who can help us, who's working with the investigation team. He's with BWC, with KPMG, with Deloitte, and he is collecting the information, saying it's for consulting project, but actually it's related to our investigation. So we can get someone externally to help us, because we don't want anyone internally to interact with the staff related to fraud case. Maybe this is the situation. Now, after we finish the first stage, which we say what? Information seeking. And then we have confirmation seeking. Now the final stage, the last person we speak with is the suspect. We call the stage admission seeking stage. Now we are trying to obtain admission. We are trying to obtain the confession from the suspect. But we are only allowed to go to this admission seeking if we have already all the evidence and all the statement and we are sure 80-90% that this is the person who committed the fraud. If until now we are not sure this is the person who committed the fraud, what is the right approach for us to do? The right approach, we speak in general with him. We can do an interview with him, but it's not about admission seeking. It's about information seeking or confirmation seeking. Say, tell us about your operation. Tell us how you handle the inventory shipment. Tell us about how you do inventory count. You ask them general questions, but you don't accuse them. You don't say you are doing fraud. You don't tell them we uncovered your fraud, because in that case you are not sending him the signal we are investigating fraud. We're just trying to understand your operation and how you are handling your work. What are the controls you have? What are the procedures you follow? And what documentations you have. In that case, think about it. The fraudster, he say, how come they speak with me, they don't ask me any questions about the fraud, so most likely they are not aware of the fraud that happened. And this is a good signal for us to send in case we don't have enough evidence. Why? Because he will go back to his work, he will say, oh, they didn't uncover that I was doing the fraud, so in that way I can continue my work without worrying about them, because it looks like they don't know that I'm involved in the fraud. They thought maybe it's someone else. But if we already have all the evidence, we have all the witnesses, and we have enough evidence to prove that this is the person who did it or take legal action against him, we can do admission seeking with him, and we can tell him, yes, we are here to obtain information from you. But be careful, never when you are trying to obtain admission from a person, tell him, so did you do the fraud or not? This is completely wrong way of asking him. Because first he's gonna say, no, I didn't do it. Second, now you are telling him it's about the fraud. So always when you are gonna ask him questions, you need to be sensitive. Don't use any of these emotive words like fraud, corruption, investigation, illegal activity. You need to speak with him in general. For example, who took the inventory? Didn't steal the inventory? Who accepted a gift from the vendor, not a bribe from the vendor? So try to make sure the language you use describing the action, not giving any legal definition of fraud or corruption or illegal activity. Number two, when we are trying to speak with him, make sure your question is not yes and a no answer, a yes and no question. Make sure the answer will not be yes or no. It should be a very general question. We call it inquiry statement rather than question. It's not like we ask him, so did you take the money? Did you accept the gift? Because of course he's going to say no. So I need to ask him in a way implying he's already guilty, implying already we know that he took the gift. So for example, I say, so how many gifts you have received from the vendor? He said, I didn't receive any gift. I said, no, I didn't ask you, did you receive the gift or not? I'm not asking you if you received the gift or not, because we already know, we already have the evidence, we already have the witnesses. I'm asking you that how many you obtained it, or when did you obtain it, or how did you obtain it. So you ask him a question implying he's already guilty. You don't ask him a question if you did it or not. So it's not about if it's about when, it's about how. So this is how you need to structure your questions. But be careful. And this is very important legal advice. When you are interviewing someone and you are saying him, we have the evidence, we have the witnesses against you. And if based on that, he said, oh my God, you have the evidence, you have the witnesses, and he will say, yes, I have done it and I have committed this fraud or corruption. Later, if you go to court and the judge will ask you, do you have the evidence and the witnesses? And you say no, you are lying to him during an interview for you to be able to obtain the confession. Now, all information you obtain from him, the whole confession admission is not acceptable legally in court, is not admissible. So you need to be very careful when you are trying to figure out your investigation strategy and the interview technique. You are not allowed to lie to him to be able to obtain his admission. You can't deceive him, you can't manipulate him. Any kind of manipulation, deception, or illegal practices you are going to do during the interview is going to lead you to lose all the information that you obtain from him, because in that way the judge will say, well, you obtain this information by using illegal approach. So you need to be careful not to try to lie to him, because he is, in many cases, he's going to ask you, so do you have the evidence? If you have the evidence, it's up to you to decide. You are going to tell him you have the evidence or not. But if you don't have the evidence, you can say, yes, we have the evidence against you, because that's considered you are lying to him, you are deceiving him during the interview. Now, of course, when you are going to ask him the questions, you need to be very careful about how you are going to ask him the questions and how you are going to make him provide admission. Remember, fraudsters, they are expert in lying. So when you are going to ask him questions, he's going to find a way to run away from your question. For example, you are going to ask him, so how did you take the inventory out of the warehouse? You are saying how, you are not saying did you take it. He say, who told you I took the inventory? See, he didn't answer the question. Be careful when you are asking someone a question, is he actually answering my question, or he is providing what we call weak denial? He's trying to ask additional question, or he's trying to ask something else, or he's trying to say something different. For example, if I ask him, so how did you take the warehouse, the items from the warehouse? He will say, I'm not sure. See, he didn't say yes, he didn't say no. We call it weak denial. This is why we need to listen. Any answer other than no is yes. If he's trying to run away, not to say yes or no, he's trying to think, he's trying to buy time to figure out what is the proper answer he needs to give me for him to be able to lie, so in that way I will not figure out what he was doing. So this is why you need to use a technique where you need to repeat the question. You say, listen, I asked the question, you didn't answer me. You went somewhere else. You are trying to direct the conversation in different direction. I need to bring the conversation back to this area, and I would like to emphasize on my question. What if he tried to run away? What if he got upset? What if he decided not to answer? And another way, I can ask him alternative question. I say, okay, let's leave this question for now. Let's speak about another question. What kind of controls you have inside your warehouse? What kind of documentation you need to provide to move inventory? So sometimes you need to figure out the proper way. You speak about something sensitive, he doesn't want to speak about, you stop that. If he doesn't want to continue, because you don't want to end the interview, you go back to another area that's not sensitive. Then you go back to your question. Your alternative techniques that you use is very important and effective, and this is why we teach so many courses with ACFE related to interviewing techniques. In case your team or department are interested, you can contact me and we can deliver 2 days, 16 hours, a specific training course about interviewing techniques. How can you do an interview with the witnesses? How can you do interview with the victims? How can you do interviews with the suspect to be able to get the admission in the proper way? But here we are just speaking about general way. And if you are interested also in understanding this in depth, definitely when you study to become certified fraud examiners, we teach you all these techniques. How can you conduct the interview? How can you collect the evidence? How can you document the evidence? How can you write the fraud examination report? So these are all important techniques for you as a professional working in anti-fraud or in fraud examination, in internal audit or in compliance, to be able to acquire for you to handle any fraud investigation effectively. I hope this gives you an overview of how we conduct an investigation in the beginning, and how then we can go and collect the evidence, and then we go conduct the interview. We are going to share other videos in the future explaining the other elements of fraud examination. But as of now, I just want to give you just an introduction about what we need to do when we are handling any fraud investigation until we speak with a suspect and get his confession. Thank you so much for attending, and definitely you can like and subscribe in my YouTube channel to get additional videos and notification about our future training and videos. Best of luck on your fraud investigation, and I wish you the best in your career as anti-fraud professional.